Think when she chose to bear a son. Doubt coiled in her blood, a whisper beneath the sandworm's breath. Think when she chose to bear a son. Leto II saw farther millennia of human suffering, etched in the golden path's iron spine. Wise his visions burned with a truth, the truth the Bene Gesserit could not unravel. A sandworm's breath future where humanity gnawed its own heart out, extinct by its own hunger. The Shai-Hulud's final warning, a scar in the God Emperor's journals, inked in the language of survival, not mercy, not prophecy. A ledger of what had to be paid, sand shifted under thrones, blood turned to wine in the stills. Leto's children would never know a sky unchoked by dustinly, the price of a path that demanded every soul as collateral. Leto's visions did not show a future of glory. They revealed an unseen collapse, a prescient extinction the Bene Gesserit's millennia-old plan could not forestall. The golden path was no grand designate, was a gambit, a 3,500-year chain of suffering to buy survival. What did he sacrifice? Billions of lives, 1,000 civilizations, all to outrun an end even gods could not name. The Bene Gesserit bred emperors, but Leto became the first to see the edge of the void. His tyranny was not choice, it was arithmetic. Every war, every death, a counter in a ledger only he could read. The plan was never about harmony. It was a race against a shadow that moves faster than light, and the cost. A universe held together by the thinnest thread of will. What happens when the thread snaps? The desert swallowed Paul Atreides, his footsteps vanished beneath shifting dunes. A decade later, Leto II would inherit a galaxy teetering on the edge of a void. The Buttlerean jihad had broken machines, it could not break time. The Bene Gesserit bred generations to see what Leto saw in a single vision, humanity's collapse not by war, but by its own unchecked hunger. The golden path was no salvation, it was a cage. To starve the Imperium of choice, of emotion, of the very instincts that had birthed the jihad. Leto's mandibles clicked in the wind, his eyes held the weight of millennia. Paul had walked into the unknown. Leto would walk through fire. The famine time was not a punishment, it was a scar. A wound sewn to stop a bleeding universe. What flickered in Shai-Hulud's final whisper? A name, a pattern. A shadow that outlasts light. The answer lies buried where no machine ever dug. 170 words. Paul Atreides walked into the sand, not as a man but as an offering. His footprints vanished by dawn. Leto II would later call this act the first fracture in the golden path. The Shai-Hulud's final warning was not a roar, but a silence, a pause in the dune's breath before the storm. Bread, what did Leto see when he generations to a gazed reed beyond the prescience, a collapse no spice mind could chart? Bread, what did Leto see when he generations to a gazed reed beyond the prescience spices whispers? They missed the howl beneath. The sandworm's life cycle is a clock with no hands, each egg a buried sun, each death a star's collapse. Leto understood the Shai-Hulud was not keystone but sentinel. It guarded a threshold. A moment when the desert would swallow not water but time itself. Paul's sacrifice was the match, Leto's tyranny the flame. He did not rule to conquer, he ruled to outlast. The visions showed a future where humanity's hunger became its extinction. A spice-fueled implosion, no machine could predict the cost of hope. The Bene Gesserit spoke of balance. Leto carved a bridge through fire. He became two beings in one, a paradox walking, not to save but to endure. The golden path was no salvation, it was a scar, a wound kept open to stop a deeper rot. The final warning, a single image, the sandworm's last breath, not in sound but in the shape of its shadow. A pattern Paul's voice had etched into the dunes. Leto followed it, through millennia of screams. Through the silence where gods listen, what price a universe unbroken, Leto paid in blood. The answer lies not in the spice, nor the worm, but in the space between their pulses. A warning written in the dust of all things dying. The Bene Gesserit's plan was etched in bone and blood long before the first spice harvester scarred the dunes. Their breeding ledgers, hidden in the marrow of noble houses, sought not just a prophet but a survivor. A being who could taste the future in the dust of dead stars. Leto II's birth was no triumph, it was a stitch in the fabric of time, a hybrid form forged from human arrogance and sand-trout instinct. His scaled skin, his dual respiratory systems, the way his body could shed moisture like a prey-reach adaptation, a gambit against the famine time. A collapse not of politics but of ecosystems, a thirst that could not be quenched by wells or still suits. The Golden Path's math was written in ash. To preserve diversity, they needed dispersion planets sundered, cultures atomized, knowledge scattered like seeds in a storm. Leto saw the cost in every pulse of the spice, every writhing sandworm. He burned cities to keep them from burning in the next age. He erased dialects to prevent their silence in the void. The Bene Gesserit, for all their memory, could not see the full shape of the collapse. Their continuum stretched too narrow. Leto's vision, raw and unfiltered, showed him civilizations drowning not in war, but in their own fragility. A prescient extinction, inevitable unless the present bled. What did he see in the Shai-Hulud's shadow? Not a god, but a mirror. The worm's relentless hunger, the way it reshaped the desert, became a parable. Survival demands sacrifice. Leto's tyranny was the price of that lesson. He ruled with a blade in his own heart, knowing every edict carved a grave. Outrun. Did the Bene Gesserit know their child would become both savior and executioner? Perhaps. Their plan was a labyrinth, and they the minotaur who fed it hope. Leto's path was never about power. It was about ensuring the human race did not become a footnote in the dust. The cost. A galaxy's worth of souls, bound to a future they would never live to see. The honored matters rose not from weakness, but from the Bene Gesserit's blind faith in their design. Their return was a mirror cracked and screaming, reflecting centuries of failed control. The Spacing Guild, that ancient gatekeeper of stars, held the Imperium together with threads. Its spice-dependent monopoly, born before Dune's first dynasty, now frayed under the weight of its own necessity. Leto II saw the fracture. He saw the guild's collapse would scatter the stars to ash, so he became the storm. His reign was no grand tyranny, it was a splinter in the throat of history, forcing humanity to choke on its own survival. The Bene Gesserit bred emperors to shape the gene pool. Leto shaped the gene pool by burning it. Every stillborn, every poisoned well, every planet carved into a tom each was a counter in a game where the honored matters were the inevitable checkmate. The guild's ships, those blindfolded leviathans, carried the fate of civilizations. Leto knew their pilots were already dead. Their eyes had been stolen by the same future he bled to delay. What did he see in the sandworm's final whisper? Not salvation. A wall, a barrier of bodies between humanity and annihilation. The Golden Path was no path, it was a scar, and the Shai-Hulud's warning. It lies buried beneath the bones of those who called it a curse. Leto's eyes held the future, they did not hold the truth. The Bene Gesserit feared saviors, yet birthed one. Their calculations could not account for the hunger in his blood, the echo of Paul Atreides, the shadow of the Kwisatz Haderach. He saw the honored matters rising again, their vengeance a storm no spice could still. He saw ecosystems unravel, civilizations ash. But did he see the price, or only the shape of it? The Golden Path was no triumph. It was a dam built from bones, holding back a flood of its own making. Every bond forged in fear, every law carved from corpses, only deepened the rot. The more he controlled, the more the cycle coiled. Did the visions blur the line between necessity and obsession? The Bene Gesserit's worst dread was not a messiah, it was a god. One who trades one tyranny for another, calling it balance. Leto ruled to prevent ruin, yet ruin followed. Not from the matters, not from Shai-Hulud, but from the weight of his own design. What collapses when the prescient blind themselves to the cost? The answer festers in the sand, and the scar, it grows. The scar does not heal, it deepens. Leto's reign was no despot's whim. It was an equation balancing human fire against the cold math of extinction. The Bene Gesserit bred generations to see patterns. They missed the void between stars, a collapse no spice mind could map. Leto did. His symbiosis with the Shai-Hulud was not conquest. It was a cipher. The famine time's bones were not a tyrant's trophy, they were a ledger. Each death a counter in a game where the alternative was quieter. No spice, no empire, no breath. The Shai-Hulud's final warning, it gnaws still, not spoken, not seen. a tremor in the dunes, a hunger unspoken. Leto knew the cost, he bore it. The Imperium's architects carved their names in stone, he carved his in time. And the path, it bends, always bends, toward survival, toward silence. The warning lingers, buried, unheeded, until the sand shifts again. The visions burned in his blood. Leto II saw the end before the beginning of future, where humanity's hubris unraveled the very threads he fought to weave. His rule was no triumph, it was a dam against a flood of extinction. To breed diversity, to scatter the genes like seeds in poisoned soil, that was the price. The Bene Gesserit schemed for balance. They did not see the rot beneath their calculations. Leto did. He became both god and executioner. His hybrid form a monument to what survival demands. What is a savior but a tyrant with a longer timeline? The golden path required sacrifice not of the body, but of the soul. Every law, every edict, every war was a stitch in a tapestry of delayed collapse. He knew the Imperium would forget his name. He knew they would curse him. Yet without his hand, the collapse would come sooner. The Bene Gesserit's grand design faltered where they could not foresee that humanity's worst enemy was itself. Does survival justify the wound? Leto's answer was etched in millennia of tyranny. The Shai-Hulud ran its course, but the final warning lingers in the silence between his actions. The Imperium's future is a mirror. No, will it break the cycle, or become the very monster Leto sought to kill? The sand shifts, the path bends, and the cost was always waiting. What did Leto II see in the sand's whisper that demanded a dynasty of chains? The Bene Gesserit wove their continuum of memory to shape identity, yet Leto's path was carved to outlast their design. A path of tyranny, not hubris. The Shai-Hulud's warning echoed not as a death knell, but a plea. Could the collapse he feared have been a shadow of his own making? The golden path was no salvation. It was a 3,500-year gambit to outrun prescient extinction, not avert it. But what if the Fremen god's final message was not a threat, but a riddle? A key to a future. Leto's thorned crown blinded him too. The cost was never just, the cost was inevitable. Or was it? The dunes remember. What will they tell you? The honored matters returned not as conquerors, but as harbingers of a collapse Leto II visions could not defy. Their knowledge cut deeper than his Fremen blood. The golden path was a dam against a flood even the Bene Gesserit did not name. Leto's prevention was a lie the sands outlived.